You're watching Global Trade This Week with Pete Mento and Doug Draper. Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us here. Doug is out on assignment this week. By assignment, I mean vacation. So I, Keenan, will be filling in his place here. And along with me is Pete Mento. You're back. Welcome.
Gee, thanks, Keenan. It's a pleasure to be here. I watched last week's show and I noticed that all of the questions that I had hoped would be asked on your first, live appearance here with us at Global Trade This Week were not asked. And I know that there's a lot of things that our listeners and viewers would love to know. First off, you spend a lot of time out in nature, big skier, as a Coloradan, a young Coloradan. Have you ever been mistaken for Bigfoot, as an example? You're definitely very Yeti-esque. There's a lot of hair there. You've got a dark background right now, and I don't think anyone can really see just how follically unchallenged you are. I mean, this is a lot of hair. So has anyone ever stopped and said, it's a Sasquatch, when you are out either, are you a skier or a snowboarder? Which one is it?
Snowboard, though I do backcountry ski, so I've been learning skiing just to be able to get back there, but snowboarding.
Of course you do. So has anyone ever thought that maybe you were an escaped gorilla out in the backcountry of Colorado?
I have not been tranquilized yet, fortunately. So I haven't been within tranq gun distance, though there's been a couple reportings. People are excited about these footages and, sightings, and it turns out to just be me. Yeah. So, it happens from time to time.
You're a natural guy. So from a conditioning perspective, with all of this, are you is it a mixture of roots, hemp, and berries that are going on here? With some squirrel turds and
pine oil.
Yeah. Or are we just going with like a body wash 4-in-1 kind of a thing? Like what do we got going on?
Yeah. I think it's, pine oil type stuff. But of course, as you would predict, it's manufactured up in Boulder, Colorado. So it's good.
Of course it is. Yeah. I guarantee you there's some CBD in that. What would it take for us to get a picture of you? Have you had a beard since you were 11, or can we get a picture of you when you were clean shaven? And
so I could grow one at age 12, though I was not allowed to have one. I had to shave every day through high school, and just by habit, I continued until eventually was on assignment doing a documentary and just wasn't able to shave, and then just like, this is kind of nice.
I love it. We give you a lot of grief for not only being 13 and having a beard, but also being the hippy dippy audio video man. But you are a very clever cat and very smart, and you hold your own with Doug and I before we do these video Global Trade This Weeks, and you don't back down. So most people, in the face of our arrogance and self-entitled lunacy, would be like, oh, well, clearly, but you don't. You tell us we're a couple of stupid old men, and you continue to argue with us. That's why I'm looking forward to today. I do want to say that I think Doug was not nearly as much of a cantankerous old get off my lawn, stick in the mud as I had hoped he was last week, and that kind of bothered me. So,
that's a good point. Well, thank you for the compliment, and I'm excited to have our conversation for sure.
I do notice that.
What do you want to start off with here?
I think the first one won't be too tough. I don't think we're going to disagree much because you are young and you do like the technology, but Every morning I wake up, I open my email, and it's just one email after another, Journal of Commerce, American Shipper, you name it, talking about how broken everything is, how ports are broken, and the systems aren't doing enough, forwarders can't find space. There was a tweet I read today from a very rational source that said they don't know how much longer supply chains can sustain $20,000 40-foot ocean containers from China to the West Coast. And I saw that and I said, well, they can't sustain it at all, first of all. But, I came back from New York last week and I was sitting at the dining room table and Jen walked in, and if you haven't seen this thing yet, The Summer of Soul, have you seen it yet, Keenan? All right. No. Amazing. During the time that Woodstock was happening in Harlem, there was probably a much better music festival. It was the Harlem Culture and Music Festival. It was happening at the same time. and James Brown, Stevie Wonder, like these amazing acts were happening. But one of the ones that happened was The Fifth Dimension. And if you've never heard the song, this is the dawning of the age of Aquarius. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Now, you probably remember it from the end credit scene of The 40-Year-Old Virgin with Steve Carell. Do you remember that scene where they had "This is the dawn"?
I actually don't remember that being in the
age of
movie.
Aquarius. Yeah, well, Jen came home after I come back from New York, and I'm sitting in her place, and I'm listening to Marilyn McCoo, who's probably one of my first crushes in 1970. Singing it with The Fifth Dimension, and I'm listening to it, and I'm thinking, you know what? That type of hopefulness in the age of all this injustice and social inequity and the brokenness of the late 60s and early 70s. I feel like we are at the dawning of the age of Aquarius, my friend. Like all these things that are broken right now. Doug likes to talk about the Roaring '20s, and he deserves his due. He was right. All this consumption and all this economic madness that we're seeing, it is necessitating change. It is necessitating an attitude by both freight forwarders and technology companies to come up with solutions. And I think that in the face of all of this chaos, what we are beginning to see now is a new attitude towards cooperation, new attitudes towards the adoption of technology, massive amounts of investment in these sorts of ideas and technology, and probably a coming together of a lot of forces, both regulatory and independent, commercial, that are probably going to find us in the next 5 to 10 years looking at whole new paradigms, looking at whole new situations and foundations for where logistics can go. So yes, things are hard now, but I will say that if we're patient, something beautiful will happen on the other side of this. So this is the dawning of the age of Aquarius. And I think that we should probably have a more positive attitude and patience, because on the other end of this, something beautiful will happen.
That is poetic, and I believe you're right. I hope you're right. I think that's a great message when there are so many challenges out there, seeing what could come, the next generation of peace, love, hope, creativity, kind of what that song was about. And I'm not a huge astrology guy, but doesn't it take a couple hundred years? Like, they weren't right on back in the 60s. Like, it could be happening right now.
Yeah, Keenan, I don't believe at all in astrology. So maybe I should probably preface my comments by saying that. But I am a big believer in
right. It's a metaphor.
Being groovy, man, and flower power. I think love is the answer to most things. So if we can find ways to cooperate through technology and data, we'll be fine. But this is, as you said, so that first every couple of 100 years, we have to find ourselves in a terrible situation to force one another to get to a point like this. Shippers hate it, forwarders hate it, and although the carriers at first loved it, honestly, how much money are they really making? I mean, you look at their 10Ks and you see the profitability. There will come a point where they're investing all that money into ship buying. They're not holding on to that money. They're putting it into deeper assets, and those assets will just make it dwindle away. So I think in the end, is this really going to be a long-term financial windfall for them? Probably not.
Right. And I believe you've described before how the cycle seems like it's going to continue, where now they're building a whole bunch of new ships. And so we're going to see a lot more capacity once they're done building those. Things kind of go in cycles, and maybe a little bit more science behind it than astrology. Have you heard of the book? I haven't read it, but people keep talking about it. The Fourth Turning.
No, I have not.
Have you heard of that at all? So I don't know too much about it. I'll have to read it and report back to everyone here. But I've been hearing people talking about it and kind of the idea of changing of ages. But they have different levels where you go from awakening to unraveling, which we had been going through. We're currently in a crisis, and then the next cycle is a high. So there's kind of 4 phases of that. And whether or not it's physically, literally true, it is true that people pay attention to astrology, or people pay attention to social scientists that come up with these types of models, and then people try to project, and can I make money in the stock market predicting crises to come. Though I'm optimistic that things are getting better. Things will get better, though some lessons may not be learned, and we may just have more excess capacity and stuff in the future too.
Binge purge, boom bust, boom bust. No one ever learns, man. All right, hit me up, bud. What's your first topic?
Yeah, so let's start off with food fights. Are food fights incoming? So, depending on where you are in the world, things may or may not have changed. I know some people were criticizing the president's administration for bragging about saving Americans 16 cents on the average 4th of July meal, though, in some sense, that is pretty impressive given everything going on around this year. Though, correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of normal inflation targets don't look at food prices, like they exclude food and gas for most like CPI type baskets. But people are talking about food prices going up, and it doesn't seem to be universal yet. So, in the UK, for instance, I'm seeing a lot of reports that things are normal and fine if you live in London or a large major metropolitan area. Though, if you're in a rural area, go into your local grocery store, you're seeing a lot of empty shelves. And it's kind of this mismatch where there are fields full of food in the UK that cannot get their produce to market because of the shortage of lorry drivers or truck drivers for those of us on the correct side of the pond. Lorry drivers aren't working, so people are just having to plow their fields under, and there are literally empty store shelves. So I guess we can't just build more ships in this case. Are they going to raise prices to attract more people to become truck drivers? There's complex issues where that's one instance of drivers in the UK. But I also wanted to expand the topic a little bit more. Something you've brought up several times and I've heard, where China isn't necessarily buying everything that they agreed to in our latest trade deals. Agricultural products being a big export of the United States and something we wanted them to buy more of. I think you're probably right as far as maybe some pork and beef, the higher value stuff they may not be buying as much of. But I've been hearing a lot of reports both online, reading, as well as talking to literal farmers from the U.S. Midwest, where every time they have an auction for corn, soybeans, wheat, there's a single large anonymous buyer that buys up everything. And they all know it's China, but it's not officially China. And so I was curious if you had seen anything about that or could add to, are they really not buying everything they promised, or is it just the high value items they should be buying according to the agreement they haven't, but secretly they're buying up all the wheat, all the soybeans? Because as a background, there's been some crop failures. Brazil, China itself, America, we've had some derechos. There's been kind of a cascading effect of several storms or droughts. And wondering if you've been seeing anything about China buying up a lot of food.
I got to tell you, before we did show prep and before you sent me this, I hadn't heard anything. So I was feverishly, like, I called people and looking around as far as like anonymous Chinese buyers. And it turns out there's like State Department stuff talking about not really so much anonymous Chinese buyers, but China trying to buy everything they can. That there's been a run on all foods, raw foods, processed foods, whatever they can get a hold of right now, because they do have a deficiency right now in both proteins and raw material food. So it does not surprise me at all that that's the case. I think that where you're hearing, I think there's a very different narrative here. There's the narrative of U.S. government-supported exports to China, the ones that Mr. Trump was trying to get done. And then there's just the commercial sales. And those commercial sales are probably the ones that are going through the roof right now. And China's going to make sure the ones that happen to the Department of Agriculture are not, because those are the ones that won't allow the Biden administration to save face. I think also you have a lot of, third-party, almost agency purchases that are going through third-party commercial independent contractors that are probably happening, that could be getting done for any sort of non-government agency, that are probably happening for Chinese grocery stores or whatever the case may be, or third-party independent wholesalers. They could also be happening for food processors that are going on as well. When you talked about Europe, that one's killing me, because the European Union is having some interesting issues with Brexit as well, where you've got cheeses that are no longer being found on shelves. You have a lot of dairy that's not going back and forth. You have fishery issues right now. You have a lot of beef issues that are happening back and forth. And then add to the effect that supply chain is just broken now. There are not enough drivers. There's not enough trucks. You have congestion issues. You've got refrigeration issues, and it just adds to spoilage. It adds to stuff that's sitting there, and then people don't want to manufacture it. You've got a cardboard problem. I never in my life thought I would hear myself say that. So yeah, the supply chain is just broken right now, and it's going to take us a while to get the thing back in shape again. I was in a meeting last week where someone said to me, a year ago we thought, when this started up again, on food, just food and beverage, it was going to take us 6 months to get it back to normal again. And now we're saying 18 months from now. From now is what it's going to take for us. I mean, that's 2 harvests from now. That just seems ridiculous, but I don't think it seems ridiculous anymore because you've got to process stuff. You've got exports. You've got the fact that we have to get seeds from one place to another and back and forth because we need hemispheric seed growth. I don't think it's as crazy as that at all. So I think China's going to do whatever it takes to feed their people. I think China's going to do whatever it takes. They've certainly got the money to do it, but they're also going to do whatever it takes to make sure that Biden can't take credit for it.
Interesting points, and great mentioning. I wasn't even thinking about Brexit, but I'm sure that has changed a lot of people's business plans and being able to source or sell exports, including food.
One more thing
there.
I want to mention, how hot has it been where you are right now? I want you to think about what that's going to do to cattle prices. The amount of heads of cattle right now in Wyoming, in Utah, in Colorado, in Calgary, in Canada, the amount of cattle that does not have enough water to grow grazing land, doesn't have water to keep it well watered, it's going to have a drastic reduction in the amount of cattle that we have available. They're going to slaughter it early or it's going to die. And I think that's going to have a negative effect on beef prices.
Heat, water, have also been hearing as the price of basic feed stocks go up, they just can't afford as many cattle, so they're culling them ahead of time, selling them when they're small, that sort of thing. So there may be more of a crunch of that going in the future. Also seeing some interesting bills going off on a little bit of a subtangent here in Colorado. There's a Colorado Pause Act that's been proposed for animal welfare, though if they implement this pro-animal welfare plan, it would dramatically increase the amount of carbon per pound of meat produced, or just straight up make it illegal to produce certain types of meat. So yeah, there's lots of changes going on, ranging from supply chain being broken to weather events to, lots going on. So get on my soapbox here for a public service announcement. Everyone should plant their own victory garden, get some seeds growing in your backyard. You're not going to feed yourself, but if everyone does a little bit, we might have a little bit more nutrition than we'd otherwise see if supply chains really break down.
You could also eat a lot less too. I was listening to Rogan's podcast the other day. That rich son of a bitch that owes me a couple of dinners. And Joe, feel free to call me anytime about that. I understand you're coming through Boston soon. Happy to cash in on that. Guess how many chicken wings are consumed in the United States just on Super Bowl Sunday?
Couple dozen at least.
No, in total in the United States.
Yeah, no idea how much.
1.5 billion chicken wings. So that's 750 million chickens that have to die just for Super Bowl Sunday. That has made my head hurt since I heard it. So 750 million chicken have to die just for one day of our chicken wings. How many chickens have to die all year for the amount of chicken wings that we eat in this country? And then all the other parts, if you ever go to China, chicken feet are something that people in China eat all the time. So anyway, I'm getting off on a tangent, but maybe we should just eat less.
Wow, that's really wild.
Yeah, and this is from a guy that, trust me, I've eaten enough for everyone that any of us know. But just reduce, reuse, recycle. Reduce is a big part of that as well. And that brings us to halftime at the Cap Logistics Global Trade This Week show, brought to you by Cap Logistics. Do you have anything you want to plug this week, Keenan?
Oh, let's see. Well, I'm just going to stick with everyone should plant a victory garden. You're not going to feed yourself probably, but try planting something. It's middle of the summer. It's not too late for a second crop this summer. Plant some kale, plant some peppers, plant all sorts of things that don't need the full length to go. Yeah, grow some food.
All right. Well, I'm giving a keynote speech on August the 2nd, I believe, for the South Carolina Trucking Association. It is my first live in-person keynote since the pandemic. I'm doing it in Myrtle Beach. I will be just coming back from Antigua for my birthday, my 50th. So I will be hungover, to be sure, but I assure you, it's going to be a hell of a speech. I fit in all my nice old suits again, so I'm going to look good. And it's my first live speech.
You kept them that whole time. You had the vision you were going to get back there.
I felt guilty. You know, you go to Hong Kong, get some really nice handmade suits for like $13 a piece. Those tailors are amazing. You don't throw them out. But
yeah, Hong Kong was impressive.
But here's the thing, dude. Like, I have not given a live speech. I've been talking into my laptop or to my webcam for what? You know, a year and a half now. So this is my first live.
And even to large audiences like, you know, our show that gets frequented by Joe Rogan, he's in the audience right now, as well as, you know, you were just on The Economist doing the cybersecurity and global trade week, and that's a huge audience. But you're right, that's on a computer, so you're going to be back in physical reality with people, huh?
It's going to be awesome. I'm really, really, really excited. So and then I have about 6 more before the fall is up, and they're back in full swing. Some of them are very small, some of them are actually pretty big. So that makes me feel really good that people are doing these again, and that we're getting back out there, and these trade shows are happening. So it's not going to stop me from doing trade school and doing Trade Geek and getting to Global Trade this week. These are all very important because I'm not sure people are going to be going to these things like they used to. But the fact that we're all getting together again and doing these sorts of things, it just makes me feel like maybe we've overcome the worst of this.
Yeah, you're right. Things may be changing, but congratulations that these events are happening in person, that you're going to be able to see some people and be back in front of an audience in person.
Wait till I get to Colorado, buddy. I'm taking you to Supercuts. We're going to get we're going to get you a nice adult boy haircut. All right, so
I'm going until it's long enough for Locks of Love, right? I got to do something
so
good.
Do you go with the man bun, or is it more of a Jedi kind of a braid you've got going on back there?
I call it a Jedi bun, so yeah, it's it's a man bun, but it's a little more.
You handsome devil. So my next topic is something that I'm going to be devoting a lot of time to lately because I have been spending a lot of time dealing with it, and it's the Uyghur cotton issue. So for those of you who aren't familiar with what is going on, and I have to speak with the term alleged because I have a habit of not trying to get involved in politics. So currently there is a Muslim minority, Turkishly ethnic-based group of Chinese nationals that are called the Uyghurs, and they are in a very specific part of China. And it has been alleged by a number of international non-government agencies involved in humanitarian aid and research that believe that there is a full-scale ethnic cleansing of these people that is being done by the Chinese. Moreover, that they're being used for slave labor, forced labor, primarily in the areas of cotton, and that this type of labor permeates all the way through not just picking cotton, but also through the creation of filament fibers, and the creation of raw cotton, all the way up to raw cotton materials and fabric. And in order to help to deal with it, many nations, but most notably the United States, have put sanctions on the importation of cotton materials from this particular area of China. So that's the background on it. What's been happening specifically in the United States has been a brutal procedural, come to Jesus moment with American retail importers who are trying to learn with customs on what are the necessary documents and the necessary materials and information in order to prove to the U.S. government that the products that they're importing did not, in fact, originate from this region. And I can tell you from firsthand experience, it is extremely difficult to live up to the requirements. You can use genetic information, but guess what? That's not necessarily good enough. You can use affidavits, not necessarily good enough. it's really been a difficult journey. People using technology, people using boots on the ground. But in the end, it really comes down to whether or not those people that are reading the documents believe that it's legitimate. And there has been some incredible fraud, some really dastardly, awful, sinister things that people have been doing to get around it. And I guess all that aside, for one of the first times in my career, I'm looking at a sanction and I'm saying, did this work? Like, have we made something so hard that American companies are going to say, I'm just not going to buy anything from this part of the world? 1 in 5 cotton t-shirts in America comes from that region. That's how much cotton we're talking about. And many American retailers now are just looking at that part of the world and they're saying, I can't do it anymore. I can't deal with this frustration. You win. Throw my hands up. I'm out. I'm just not going to buy from there anymore. So did this sanction and the way that it was enforced, is this going to be a template for how we're going to do things in the future? Have we frustrated American importers so much that this was actually an effective sanction and it worked?
You bring up a lot of interesting new parts for me. I was aware of some of the issues going on and the sanctions around Uyghur labor involved in making of these things. I hadn't considered as much of how do we know what's real? That sort of like they say it's from this other region, but of course it could have just been swapped and we don't really know. And so, yeah, our company's just going to hedge their bets and just go to a completely different region or exit that business if there's an uncertain amount of liability, whether it's a huge PR scandal of someone like H&M getting involved in, like using child slave labor or ethnic minority genocidal labor. It's interesting. How do we really know what's inside of a good, where it comes from? There's a lot of black market type stuff, and you probably know better than I do. Just on some of these general trade type issues. So one country might not accept something from another country, but they might sell it to a third country in between type of deal. And you launder cotton or tobacco or plastic or something, and you obfuscate where it originally came from to get around whatever particular sanction is in there. Or are you saying that did this sanction actually work enough that people just aren't doing it?
Yeah, but what I'm wondering is, are they just going to stop buying anything they have to justify? Or they're going to say, if it's not Egyptian cotton, if it's not U.S. origin cotton, if it's not cotton from this other region, I don't want it. So next year when we start fulfilling orders, if it says Chinese cotton, don't send it to me. I don't want to deal with it. I mean, the people are so frustrated. It's taking hundreds of hours, hundreds of man hours. And the technology answers to it. You can use blockchain. You can use all kinds of distributed ledger stuff. You can create all kinds of security to it. But it's still based on paperwork. And that paperwork is coming from a country. If they can make fake Louis Vuitton bags and if they can create fake pharmaceuticals, I'm quite sure they can find a way to manufacture, fake documents. So they're making fake passports everywhere.
Great point.
So I talk to these importers who are saying to me, if this keeps up, I'm going to just start making stuff in the Caribbean again or Latin America, or maybe I'll make them in Kentucky, but I'm not going to keep doing this. And to me, there's a part of me that feels for them. I'm like, it sucks. But there's a part of me that's like, did this work? Did we do a sanction that actually maybe could stop an alleged genocide and ethnic cleansing? Did we actually use a sanction that's working, that had the intended effect? Now, China, on their own side of this, is saying any company that's engaged in this sanction, we're going to come down just as hard on you. So,
really?
Keep that in mind. We're going to come down on American companies and foreign companies that are engaged in this sanction in Chinese business, and that could be problematic as well. Just like American companies, if you engage in the Saudi Arabian sanction of Israel or whatever, Middle Eastern sanction of Israel, they come down on your company. So it could be problematic.
But if people are convinced, if they're not afraid of the retaliation and companies do just totally move, you know what, I don't trust the paperwork, I'm going to go from somewhere I know it came from Egypt or somewhere completely else, that would impact decision makers in China, whether just individual companies or all the way up to the decision makers. Might they change their mind? If it's really, as alleged, an ethnic-based reason for genocide, they may still try to do what they're doing anyway, but we could take away the economic facilitation that makes it easy and profitable as we're raising awareness and people don't want to buy in and support that stuff.
So, maybe
I'm hopeful. Speaking of the Age of Aquarius, I want to be hopeful that the sanctions can have a positive effect in improving human rights and people's lives around the world.
Let the sun shine in, my friend. Let it in. Let it in. Yeah, so bring us home, man. What's the last topic?
Yeah. So kind of relating to that issue of can we use blockchain for these types of international trade, we still have what's known as the Oracle problem. So going into the fourth topic, since I knew you and I were going to be on today, wanted to have a general discussion on, is Bitcoin inevitable? Are these distributed technologies going to be working through more of the corporate area, as we've seen with IBM and Maersk, and some other people have done pilot programs that theoretically the technology works, but you're right, ultimately there's a person that needs to approve and scan, and this is a real piece of paper, and we may be able to save emails and save on some digital fraud. Once it gets to the digital area, it's secured by the blockchain, but you still have that Oracle problem connecting the digital to the real world. And then just kind of expanding on the topic of what we were discussing earlier with food and inflation prices. You know, America, at least, we have our own challenges, but America is in a relatively driving position as far as financial policies around the world. If we're going to start doing QE 43, we're going to do QE 43 and everyone else is going to follow. But if you're Uruguay or El Salvador, you just take it as it comes. And so in those countries, maybe Paraguay, but definitely El Salvador, legally made Bitcoin tender, just like the U.S. And if you download the government's app, you get $30 equivalent of Bitcoin right away to start using this and get off of a particular central bank currency or another. I like having the U.S. economy as it is. Other people might be in the sphere of a Chinese economy, and we all know that there's been alleged price fixing and manipulations of pegging to the dollar, changing it, capital outflows type of deals. There's a lot going on with it, and just wanted to get your take on what you're seeing right now, and we can dive into any of these subtopics. But is Bitcoin inevitable?
Bitcoin exists. Now, when you say inevitable, the use of Bitcoin and its adoption being inevitable, I don't know. You know how angry this topic gets me. So we can start with my latest benchmark upset for being upset about it. Now,
all right,
this Satoshi thing, whatever it is, whomever it is, said there is only going to be so many Bitcoins that are ever mined. So there is a
21 million.
There is a finite number of them. But whomever this Satoshi was has 1 million of them.
Quite a lot, yeah.
And right now, I mean, not that I have an advanced degree based on mathematics or anything, but the last time I checked, that's what, $35 billion worth of these things? Ish?
It's quite a lot. And so far, none of those have moved. I guarantee you, if some of the original, because it's all public, right? You can just look at the blockchain. If any of those original coins start to move, people would freak out because someone that people thought was dead all of a sudden has tons and tons of this asset. If they haven't moved during some of the past price spikes, then we're looking at a conspiracy like the central bank and the CIA teamed up to secretly make the best enemy of the Federal Reserve to actually own the enemy, and that'd be a deep conspiracy. I don't quite know how feasible that would be. Of course, we don't know who Satoshi Nakamoto is. I always like the theory that it was actually just Hal Finney. one of the other early guys on with it, kind of a crypto anarchist dude, and he confirmed is dead. Probably was able to take care of his wife and children just fine, though those original coins haven't moved. If we start to see those ones moving, then yes. Otherwise, Bitcoin having that fixed amount seems to be way better than all the other products out there. I'm not a fan of XRP. They just have billions. They can print billions more tomorrow. You don't have any control as an individual investor buying in or out of it. Similar with Ethereum. I like Ethereum for all sorts of the solidity language and programming of smart contracts that's potential there. But Bitcoin has something that the rest of them don't really have. It's kind of like that gold where, yeah, okay, I'm not going to buy a coffee with a chunk of gold, but if I'm going to settle international debts between large countries, yeah, it's going to be gold denominated, right? There's a role for that, even if we don't buy our coffees on a day-to-day basis with it.
I'm just going to finish my thought.
Okay.
I still contend that this is some type of subterfuge, that this is some type of espionage, because there is absolutely no greater way to take hard currency from people than what's happening right now. And if you're telling me that there is a finite amount of these, and that at some point it will be a global tender currency that will be, a means of exchange, and people are using it, and it becomes, and then at some point you reveal yourself to be the one holding all of these. We don't know who created it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'll buy into that conspiracy. Now, as far as you saying, is this going to be a thing? Of course it'll be a thing. I have friends of mine that have used comic books to buy cars. I have friends of mine that have done stand-up shows for art. I have friends of mine that have, I did a speech for an airline company for 2 first-class round-trip tickets to Kauai, right? Anything can be a means of exchange. But, as you know, I do not believe that in my lifetime you will have this ridiculousness stop being so volatile. There are too many people that are trying to engage in speculation on this. And I don't believe that where it matters, large industrial, institutional purchases can be confident on long-term sales on something so unstable.
Yeah, I think you're right. It is more of a marketing gimmick if Tesla's going to say, hey, you can buy a Tesla in Bitcoin, for instance, or other companies doing that.
And then say you can't.
And that's cool.
And then say you can't.
Right, and then say you can't because of the energy and environment type stuff. Though I do want to just mention that a lot of these arguments I'm hearing nowadays, I was hearing back in 2012, 2013, oh, Bitcoin is used to buy drugs, Wall Street Journal, 2012. Bitcoin is bad for the environment, Wall Street Journal, 2013 type of deal. But then if you look into it, it's actually just easier to measure what Bitcoin is doing electricity-wise, energy-wise, than the black box that is how much gas is spent on all the armored vehicles to move around physical paper that was grown maybe in a Uyghur region of China to make the cotton. We just don't even know what all goes into the standard quo, how much electricity are Visa servers using, right? There's a lot of things, concrete, cars, people commuting. You just don't know that number. And so I would have been more inclined to agree with you that, oh, it's an interesting idea. I wonder what's going to be inspired by it in the future early on. I thought there would have been a Bitcoin 2.0 or another thing early on. I've been surprised by Bitcoin's staying power, and it just keeps getting more institutional support and investing. So yes, you have your Teslas, but you also have Fidelity coming up with their Wise Origin Bitcoin ETF, and lots of wildcats try to do ETFs and things, and they're not going to get it. But Fidelity's a big player, and some of these others, BlackRock's are interested, Goldman Sachs, like people are interested in this stuff. I think it's coming, man.
I know you do, buddy, but I would be interested. I haven't looked lately how many non-commercial transactions happen in cash versus electronic debit these days. I know the number continues to drop. I think that there's already a lot of what you're talking about that's happening with credit cards, which sucks because it's I don't much appreciate those. But the same type of system will come up around your adorable Bitcoins, and it will be no different. It will be no different. It's going to be meet the new boss, same as the old boss. It's just that your currency will have much better technology behind it. This is just, it's the emperor's new clothes, man. And eventually, whoever came up with it will reveal themselves, and I think it'll be like the greatest, performance art thing ever done. And I've got a feeling it's going to be the Communist Party of China that probably pulled it off, or the NSA, one or the other. I don't know, but I don't trust it, man. And fortunately for me, I'm going to be dead way before any of this is going to matter. So.
Oh, you think it's a real long play? Like it's a conspiracy, but they're not showing their face for a while then, huh? I mean, it's been 10 years they've been waiting.
Yeah. Bobby Bonilla is still going to be
My money would be more on the NSA. China, I don't feel like they would want Japan to get the credit of the Satoshi Nakamoto.
Dude. First rules of espionage is to absolutely get people paying attention to the absolute wrong place and take credit. Yeah, absolutely.
It'd be true. They also just recently kicked out a bunch of miners, which I think is good for the Bitcoin ecosystem. So it's not all concentrated because
you want everybody else throwing their hard
hey,
currency at it, not your country, so that you can crash it down the road. You're not thinking, man. You're playing 3-dimensional chess here. Like
there's a lot of options. There's a lot of options.
You go buy your Tesla with your Bitcoin, and live out in the woods with your solar panels, and I'll keep driving my Jeep that gets 11 miles to the gallon because I got too many energy clients, and
Got to support them.
You grow your victory garden. I'll drop an elk every year, and we'll work it out in the common marketplace. But I don't take Bitcoin.
Nice. Yeah, we can do that.
I will take squash, but I will not take Bitcoin.
Too funny. All right. Well, I'm sure it won't be the last time we discuss these issues.
Just like it won't be the last time we talk about drones with Doug. Doug Drones
Very
Draper.
true.
That's going to be his nickname from now on. And I'm sure he's going to watch this and get so mad that I said that, but I don't care. But it was great having you as my in the A chair today. I appreciate that, and next time I'm sure you'll find some way to bring Bitcoin up again, and I'll find some way to slam it to the ground by its throat because I can't stand it. And while we were talking, it probably went up 25% because that's what happens.
It's been remarkably stable. Yeah, it's actually been remarkably stable until it hockey sticks, which will happen.
So thank you for co-hosting with me this week, Keenan. It was wonderful. As always, you are a very, very bright, clever, ingenious, young man with a lot of hair. And I just say that because I'm jealous, because as we all know, I have very little, except on my back where it grows like the green grass of Augusta. But thank you so much for being with me this week, and thank you to Cap Logistics, as always, for supporting the show. Thank all of you for listening. Please subscribe. Tell all of your friends about it. And we're looking forward to seeing you again next week with another edition of Global Trade This Week from Cap Logistics. Take it easy.